feel free to return to our channel at any time. The band's leader and creative genius, Mark Knopfler, is widely considered a guitar legend. In spite of all the success, a tempest is on the horizon, and it will be the end of the band. Let your mind wander to a young Mark Knopfler performing in the seedy bars of London with his brother David, bassist John Illsley, and drummer Pick Withers. Sultans of Swing, their 1978 breakthrough single, encapsulated the spirit of a struggling band and propelled them to stardom. They went from being bar rockers to superstars all over the world in no time. Upon the release of Brothers in Arms in 1985, Dire Straits had already transformed from a close-knit group performing in intimate venues to a worldwide phenomenon performing in stadiums. Yet, there was a price to pay for the accomplishment. Overwhelmed by the demands of fame, fatigued from constant touring, and increasingly torn apart by creative disagreements, the band began to feel the strain of their quick rise. Some felt a change among the group members. Instead of being an equal opportunity band, Dire Straits became a means to an end for Mark Knopfler's concept. It was impossible to deny Mark Knopfler's brilliance. His lyrical songwriting and complex guitar work were the band's signature sounds. Their musical progression was greatly influenced by his vision. However, Knopfler's ambition to have complete creative control became a hindrance as time passed. It helped them succeed, but it also caused tension. David Knopfler, one of the band's former members, and other band members frequently voiced their dissatisfaction with Knopfler's growing influence over the group's direction. They were in the middle of producing Communique, their second album, when David Knopfler abruptly resigned, citing creative disagreements and the burden of living in his brother's shadow as his reasons. With his departure, the dynamic within the band began to change, with Mark assuming an even more dominant role. A new level of intensity had been reached by the time Brothers in Arms burst into the scene. A record-breaking album, an endless world tour, and the insufferable pressures of fame all came crashing down. With a duration of almost a year, the tour tested the mettle of every member of the band. As weariness set in, the internal strife among the band became even more apparent. John Illsley and Mark Knopfler both wanted to hold on to the band's old friendship and spirit, but Knopfler was hell-bent on keeping the band's sound consistent. As a result of Mark's perfectionist standards and the band's demoralization caused by continuous touring, the band's creative freedom became a hindrance rather than an inspiration. In June 1988, Dire Straits headlined the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute concert at Wembley Stadium, which was one of the pivotal moments that signaled the start of the end. The vibe was fantastic, but things weren't what they seemed behind the scenes. Years of leading the band had worn Knopfler down to the point where he felt he had no control over the unruly beast that was the band. Later that year, this revelation prompted the announcement of a break. Once unstoppable, Dire Straits was abruptly shelved with no plans to come back. Mark Knopfler's desire to explore other artistic endeavors hinted at deeper cracks, yet fans believed it would be a temporary break. With the release of On Every Street in 1991, Dire Straits had a short reunion. Although it was somewhat successful, it couldn't match the enchantment of their earlier years. There were long periods of separation from home during the subsequent tour, which was exhausting. Disputes inside the group and the general feeling that they were just performing for the sake of it. Knopfler expressed his disappointment in the process in interviews, saying that it felt more like a chore than a joyous occasion for music. Knopfler made it plain that he was done with Dire Straits for good by the time the tour ended in 1992, despite the fact that the band's ongoing appeal was shown by their over 120 million albums sold worldwide. As he shifted his attention to solo work, the other members went their separate ways, leaving fans to wonder what might have been. The disbandment of Dire Straits was a mystery to fans for a long time. The challenges of overseeing the band's tremendous success have been discussed by Mark Knopfler in recent comments. He admits that the band broke up because of his controlling personality and high standards, but he also blames the industry's demands and the stress they caused on the band members. The price of perfection might have been too high, as Knopfler hinted when he said that being in severe straits stopped being pleasant. Many people were both impressed and angry by Knopfler's resolve to put an end to the grave situation. He was viewed by some as a visionary who understood when to step away, while others held him responsible for ending a band's career when it still had potential. John Illsley and the rest of the band have come to terms with the breakup as time has gone on, seeing it for what it was, a natural consequence of the circumstances. No matter how turbulent their tale gets, Dire Straits will always be a band whose music will endure. Themes from songs like Romeo and Juliet, a moving ballad about love, sorrow, and brothers in arms, which reflect on the human condition and conflict in a haunting way, are as present now as they were when they were penned. Mark Knopfler has an exceptional understanding of musical narrative through the meticulously written lyrics. However, a history of inconsistencies and strife within the band is concealed beneath the surface of these songs. A tale that centers on the band's musical compositions and the relationships among its members. In the late 70s and 80s, when financial woes appeared to be all over the news, a band of young musicians burst onto the scene, their unfiltered skill evoking that era. In the blink of an eye, they moved from performing intimate London bars to selling out arenas all over the globe. However, there were difficulties associated with the quick ascent to stardom. The band's unity started to deteriorate due to the constant touring, the pressure to make hit records, and the unavoidable creative disagreements that accompany such close cooperation. With the weight of his vision for the band's future and the expectations of their millions of followers on his shoulders, Mark Knopfler, now the band's undeniable leader, faced a formidable challenge. Their story would be shaped by this strain. Their legacy would be defined by the careful balancing act of triumph and adversity. Did Mark Knopfler's obsession with control stifle the band's unique collaborative spirit, or was he the brilliant mind who created Dire Straits and deserved to call the shots? There could be no denying Knopfler's leadership. His unique fingerstyle guitar playing, evocative songwriting, and talent for incorporating stories into tunes set Desperate Straits apart from their peers. Imagine all the times Knopfler spent in the studio, slumped over his guitar, painstakingly arranging each note as his bandmates patiently, and occasionally irately, awaited their chance to play a part. His obsession with perfection contributed to the band's greatest achievements, but it also caused underlying difficulties. With Knopfler's solitary vision casting a shadow over the ensemble, other members started to feel marginalized, and their creative contributions were overshadowed. While Knopfler's dedication to creative integrity was costly, he frequently stated in interviews that he believed Dire Straits' success hinged on keeping a consistent sound and direction. Pick Withers, the band's drummer, departed following 1982's Love Over Gold recording due to his discontent with the group's lack of teamwork. He felt that Knopfler's ideas had taken over the studio, and it was no longer a place for group collaboration. Dire Straits was essentially Mark Knopfler's baby by the time 1985's Brothers in Arms, the record that would cement their position in rock history, came out. The band's chemistry suffered as a result of the album's lavish production and expansive soundscapes, which garnered critical praise and sold over 30 million copies. The praise for Brothers in Arms was a high point and a turning moment for Dire Straits, proving that success can be a double-edged blade. Money for Nothing, featuring an iconic guitar riff and a biting criticism of the music industry, was one of the album's driving singles that propelled the band to the pinnacle of 1980s rock glory. New demands, however, came along with this degree of achievement. The subsequent relentless touring schedule was quite taxing for the band members. It was obvious that they were exhausted, even though they performed for hundreds of thousands of people. A feeling of loneliness and exhaustion had supplanted the companionship that had initially propelled them. While they were a tight team on stage, leaving fans breathless with their performances, they were gradually growing apart off stage, with each member dealing with the isolation that comes with touring. Attempting to sustain their momentum was a burden for Knopfler, who was ever the perfectionist. He wanted to break free of Dire Straits' expectations and explore new musical territory, but he could see that the band was too limited to be anything more than Dire Straits. This ambition would lead him to pursue a career as a solo artist. However, this did not come without disappointing fans who had grown to identify Dire Straits with a particular vibe and style. The fissures were more apparent than ever before by 1991, when Dire Straits was released on every street. The band's once defining creative energy appeared to be dwindling, despite the album's platinum status. Rather than being an ode to their music, the subsequent tours seemed more like a chore. Discord amongst the band members had escalated from a motivating factor to a major cause of artistic tension. The band's bassist and one of Knopfler's closest confidants, John Illsley, later discussed how the band's previous accomplishments and the need to maintain their reputation had begun to eclipse the joy of playing together. Many were relieved and saddened by Knopfler's decision to disband Dire Straits in 1995. The band's path, characterized by both immense popularity and personal turmoil, had finally reached its inevitable conclusion. And yet, Knopfler's departure did highlight a basic reality of the music business, that occasionally, to keep the art intact, one must let go of the things that allowed it to exist initially. It was an opportunity for Knopfler to rediscover music in his own way, apart from the pressures that had shaped Dire Straits. It marked the conclusion of a period that had been both emotionally and creatively rewarding for fans. The Song of Terrible Straits kept finding new listeners even after the band broke up. Their albums had an enduring character that went beyond the time they were made due to the profound emotional content of their songs and Knopfler's expressive guitar work. Imagine a late-night bar band's intensity coursing through Sultans of Swing, or a vast voyage through history and urban degradation on Telegraph Road. Questions regarding what might have been if the band had managed to strike a balance between Knopfler's artistic vision and a more inclusive style of collaboration linger as long as the music does. Could a different strategy have alleviated the tensions and prevented Dire Straits' story from ending in disbandment? The reality may lay somewhere in the middle, though, as is often the case with tales of creative collaborations. Although Mark Knopfler's insistence on being in charge hindered his bandmates' ability to contribute, it resulted in some of the most iconic songs of that time. A tale of how ambition can propel a band to stardom while also planting the seeds of its downfall. Dire Straits' legacy is thus one of unsolved paradoxes. Even though Dire Straits' music will always be around, their story is a cautionary tale about how rock and roll can be a dangerous place for anyone seeking both ambition and harmony. It tells the tale of a band who achieved superstardom but then realized that their relentless pursuit of perfection was tearing them apart. Even after all these time, the enduring charm of Dire Straits' music keeps fans turning to their albums. They hear the echoes of a band that once dominated the radio as they listened to Knopfler's voice, which is known for its unique blend of sadness and wisdom. But there's a tale of friendships put to the test, of human weakness, and of a band whose path, despite its successes, was never as straightforward as the chords that characterized their music beneath those melodies.